All right, so we're diving into something pretty deep today, like really deep. We're talking about the power of imagination.
Ooh, always a fascinating topic.
Right, and our listeners sent in some stuff from Neville Goddard, mainly his book, The Power of Awareness. And also, we've got some things from Z Library to think about.
Sounds like we've got our work cut out for us.
We do, but the thing is, this Goddard guy, he doesn't just talk about imagination like it's some whimsical daydream thing. He gets down to brass tacks,
Yeah.
real-life examples, techniques.
He's all about practical application, isn't he?
Exactly.
Hmm.
So we're going to try and figure out how this whole imagination shapes reality thing actually works. What are the tools? What happens when it goes right? What about when it doesn't?
Lots of ground to cover.
For sure. So to kick things off, maybe you can give us the lowdown on Goddard's main idea. What's the core concept here?
Okay, so basic level. We tend to think of imagination as, like you said, just daydreaming, right?
Yeah.
But Goddard's saying, no, it's the primary force shaping our lives. It's not secondary, it's not fluff, it's the foundation.
So it's like that mind over matter saying, but taken to a whole other level.
Precisely. It's like we hear mind over matter, but then we're left thinking, okay, how though?
Right, exactly. It's all very vague.
And Goddard tries to fill in those gaps.
So how does he do that? What's his explanation?
One of the biggest things he emphasizes is this idea that everything depends on your attitude towards yourself.
Oh, I've heard that kind of thing before, like self-love and all that.
It's related, but he goes deeper. He literally says, that which you will not affirm as true of yourself can never be realized by you. Meaning, it's not enough to just want something. You have to believe at a core level that you are the kind of person who can have it.
It's about who you believe yourself to be, not just what you want to have.
Exactly. Your assumptions, whether conscious or not, they become your reality.
So it's not enough to just think positive thoughts. It's about shifting your whole belief system.
It's more about recognizing the belief system you already have, often unconsciously, and seeing if it's actually helping you or holding you back.
Okay, so how do we even begin to do that?
Well, Goddard gives us some specific techniques.
This is where it gets interesting. Everyone wants the how-to.
Right. And one of his big ones is this idea of living from the end.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What does that even mean?
It means instead of just thinking about what you want, you have to live as if you already have it. You embody the feeling of it and now W, not in some future moment.
So it's not like making a wish and hoping it comes true. It's about actually stepping into that reality mentally and emotionally.
Yes. You have to align your inner state with the desired outcome. Otherwise, you're sending mixed signals.
Makes sense. You wouldn't try to run a marathon while feeling completely exhausted, right?
Exactly. Goddard tells this story about wanting to spend winter in Barbados.
Oh, I love that story.
Right. No money for the trip, but he would just sit and imagine himself already there, enjoying the sunshine, the beaches, the whole experience. And a month later, his brother sends him a steamship ticket.
Talk about a coincidence.
Right. But Goddard says it's not coincidence, it's these sealed instructions we're sending out.
Sealed instructions. That sounds kind of intense.
It is. He's saying our inner world is like sending out these commands and our outer reality has to respond.
Whoa. So it's like we're programming our own lives.
In a way, yes. And often we're doing it unconsciously. Those dominant thoughts, feelings, beliefs, they're shaping our experiences.
So if I'm constantly worried about something bad happening, I'm basically inviting it into my life.
According to Goddard, that's exactly what you're doing.
That's kind of scary, but also empowering.
It's both. It means we have a lot more responsibility for our lives than we might realize.
I think a lot of people shy away from that responsibility. It's easier to blame external factors.
It is easier, but ultimately it keeps us powerless.
So Goddard is saying we have to take ownership of our inner world if we want to change our outer world.
Yes, it's like he's giving us the keys to the kingdom, but it's up to us to use them.
This is all so fascinating. I'm already starting to see things in a new light.
That's the power of Goddard's work. It really makes you question everything.
It does, but we've only just scratched the surface, haven't we?
We have. There's so much more to explore.
Well, I can't wait to dive deeper.
So before the break, we were talking about that idea that is within, that power we have to shape our reality coming from, well, inside us.
Right, and it's all connected to how Goddard talks about the spirit of Jesus, which isn't really about religion the way most people think of it.
Exactly. He uses that phrase, but he's not talking about, like, going to church or anything.
It's more about a way of being.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about embodying a certain state of consciousness, one where you're constantly forgiving, recognizing your best self, and seeing that same potential good in everyone.
Okay, so it's like choosing love over judgment, seeing the good even when someone's messed up.
It's not about saying bad behavior is okay, but it's recognizing everyone's on their own journey, and maybe they're not at their best right now.
That's a tough one, honestly. Like when someone's being a jerk, it's hard to be all love and light about it.
It is hard. It's a practice, not something you just flip a switch and do perfectly. But Goddard gives us some tools to work with.
Oh, like what?
One he calls the coin of heaven.
Coin of heaven. That sounds biblical, almost.
He uses that kind of language, but what he means is it's like this spiritual energy we create through our imagination and faith.
Okay, so it's not actual money, but it's like the fuel for making things happen.
Exactly. And everyone has this coin. It's not limited to certain people. But you gotta know how to spend it.
Is that where the living from the end idea comes in?
Exactly. You don't just wish for stuff. You act as if it's already yours. Remember that soldier who wanted his discharge papers?
Yeah, he kept picturing holding them in his hand, feeling that relief.
And it happened. But there's another side to this too, right? What about when we try to imagine, we put in the effort, but it's like nothing changes?
That's where people get discouraged, I think. Like, is this stuff even real? Am I doing it wrong?
Goddard says persistence is key. Sometimes the results are delayed, not denied.
Like, the universe has a waiting list.
Maybe. It could be there are lessons we need to learn first, or we got to grow in some way before we're ready for what we're asking for.
Okay, so patience is important. Not always my strong suit, gotta admit.
It's tough for a lot of us, but think of it like planting a seed. You can't see it growing underground, but you trust the process.
I like that analogy. So we're tending our inner garden, making the soil right for our desires to grow.
Exactly. And that's where things like meditation, being grateful for what you have, that helps clear out the weeds, so to speak.
Speaking of clearing things out, Goddard talks about the pruning shears of revision, too, right? Not just shaping the future, but going back and changing how we feel about the past.
Right. It's not about literally changing what happened, but changing how those events make us feel now.
It's like we can edit our personal history.
In a way, yes. He even tells a story about how he used this to heal a foot injury.
No way. Just by changing how he thought about the injury.
He replayed the event in his mind, but this time it happened without the injury. And his foot actually healed.
Whoa, that's wild.
It shows the power of the mind.
So if I have a memory that makes me cringe, like that time I totally bombed a presentation at work.
You can go back in your imagination and revise that memory. Picture yourself giving the presentation smoothly, confidently, everyone loving it.
So it's not erasing the bad memory, but creating a new one alongside it.
Exactly. A new way to feel about that past event.
Wow, this is giving me so much to think about.
Right. It's like, if we can revise the past, then the future's not set in stone either. We have more control than we think.
We're not just along for the ride. We're actually driving.
Goddard would say we're the ones at the wheel.
I love that. But man, there's so much to unpack here.
There is. It's deep stuff. But super empowering once you start to grasp it.
Definitely empowering. So where do we go from here?
Well, Goddard has a lot more to say about how this all works, but I think for now, it's good to let this sink in a bit.
Yeah, a mental pause is probably a good idea. Okay, back again. I gotta say, that last part about revising the past, that's some seriously powerful stuff. It kind of makes you wonder what else you were capable of, you know?
Right. Goddard opens up all these possibilities once you start accepting that our minds have more influence on reality than we usually think.
Before the break, you mentioned the spirit of Jesus and how Goddard uses that phrase. I'm still kind of curious about that.
Yeah, it's not about religion the way most people think of it. He's talking about embodying a certain state of being.
So what does that state look like?
It's about continual forgiveness, recognizing your highest potential, and seeing that same potential good in everyone else.
So basically being the best version of yourself and assuming the best in others.
Something like that, yeah. It's about transcending ego, aligning with something bigger than just yourself. And that's not just some airy-fairy concept. It actually affects how you live your life day to day.
Give me an example. Like, how does this play out in real life?
Okay, imagine you've got a coworker who's a total pain, undermining you, taking credit for your work, the whole 9 yards.
Ugh. I think we've all been there at some point.
Right. It's easy to get sucked into that negativity, feel like a victim. BUT. If you can tap into that spirit of Jesus Goddard talks about.
You mean not punch the guy in the face?
Well, that too. But it's more about responding from a place of understanding, not just reacting out of anger. Maybe that coworker's acting out because they're insecure or unhappy.
So it's not about being a pushover, but choosing to see them as a human being, flaws and all.
Exactly. And that can change the whole dynamic. Doesn't mean you let them walk all over you, but you approach it with a different energy.
It's like killing them with kindness.
Kind of. You're radiating something positive, and sometimes that's enough to shift things.
Okay, I can see how that ties into the whole "it is within" idea. Like, changing your inner state can actually ripple outward.
Right. It's all connected. And Goddard would say, when you're operating from that spirit of forgiveness, compassion, that's when you're truly aligned with the creative power of the universe.
That's when the good stuff happens.
Exactly. It's not about forcing things, but about getting yourself into the right state of being.
Man, this has been such a mind-bending conversation. So much to think about.
It's deep stuff, for sure. But I think the biggest takeaway is that we have way more power than we realize.
Yeah, and it all starts with what's going on inside of us.
It is within. Remember, that's the key to all of this.
So as we wrap up, what's the one thing you want our listeners to walk away with?
Don't be limited by circumstances or by what you think you're capable of. You can shape your reality, but it starts with changing your mindset.
And to all our listeners out there, I'll leave you with this question. If your world is a reflection of what's going on inside you, what does that tell you? What are you creating?
That's a good one to ponder.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Neville Goddard. It's been a wild ride.
And remember, you have the power to choose what kind of ride it's going to be.
Until next time.